Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Jordan, and I will be your host today. Before we dive in, I want to take a quick moment to introduce Microsoft Reactor. Microsoft Reactor is a global community space for developers, startups, and students to learn, connect, and build. We host free events, workshops, and meetups designed to help you grow your skills, explore new technologies, and connect with industry experts. If you'd like to stay connected and hear about future sessions, scan the QR code to subscribe to our Reactor newsletter. You'll get updates on new series, training opportunities, and community highlights, all straight to your inbox. Before we wrap up, I want to introduce you to Microsoft Learn, an amazing resource to keep growing your skills after today's session. After the session, you can visit Microsoft Learn to continue exploring at your own pace. You'll find step-by-step learning paths, hands-on modules, and even certifications that can help you advance your career or deepen your technical expertise. It's the perfect next step to keep building on what you've learned here today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to learn and connect with us. And now, I'm pleased to hand it over to our speakers. Let's get started.
And we are live. Hello, Heini.
Hey, Alexi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, rather good, I'd say. I'm really excited for this next hour ahead of us where we get to talk about the exam prep.
Yeah, you were talking about the exam prep. Yes, yeah. So shall we get started?
Yeah, I think we can just get to it.
Yes, I'll change the slides. So you will be introducing yourself first. So ladies first.
All right. So hello, everyone. I'm Heini Ilmarinen. I am from Finland. So we have a bit of almost a Finnish takeover today of the channel. I happen to be actually in Portugal at the moment. So coming from a different place than usual, but I am a data platform and Azure MVP. So my background comes both from the Azure side as well as the data side of things in the Microsoft world. And I work for quite a new company called Pruvo that is only a year old. So I'm one of the co-founders and work as a data architect there. And you can find me on quite many social platforms like LinkedIn and Blue Sky with my name and connect with me. I'm always happy to connect. And if you have any questions later on, you can always reach out to me as well. Oh, yes, we're checking in if there's anyone else from Finland tuning in today.
Yes, let's go forward. So I will introduce myself next. So my name is Aleksi Partanen, and I'm also from Finland. Like Heini, I'm Microsoft Data Platform MVP and also a data architect. And I work for a company called Norin. Then I have also some other free time projects around the certification and Microsoft Fabric stuff. I have this CertiAce platform that you can find on certiace.com. It offers like free practice questions to Microsoft certification exams. The whole platform is free for now, but it won't be free forever. So take advantage of it right now when you can. It has like maybe 200 questions for DP-700. So a really good platform for that. Then I have one Discord community that I'm running. It's the biggest Microsoft Fabric Discord community currently. So we have over 1,000 people there, like discussing Microsoft Fabric topics daily. Then I have my YouTube channel, Aleksi Partanen, Master Microsoft Fabric, and there is the QR code that will take you to my YouTube channel. And on my YouTube channel, I have like 11 hours of content that will prepare you for the DP-700 exam. So if you're still missing some exam prep content, please check out my YouTube channel. There is a lot of free content especially for DP-700. And I just now started a series for DP-600 as well. So I have already some content for that exam as well. Then let's move forward. And here we have our two moderators. First, we have Vesa, a bit old photo of Vesa. Vesa is also a Microsoft Data Platform MVP from Finland. And me and Heini know Vesa quite well. And Vesa is a highly skilled technical professional. So if you have any technical questions related to DP-700, feel free to add them to the chat and ask from Vesa. Vesa knows the answer, I'm sure. And also then we have Kristen. Kristen is also a very skilled Microsoft Data Platform MVP and also knows a lot of technical stuff. So also ask questions from Christian, and Christian and Vesa will answer to all of your questions. So keep those questions coming. Okay, so let's go forward. And here we are now in the last episode of this series. There have been already 3 other before this video. So basically those can be found on Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel on demand if you have missed those. So please check out them after this if you haven't seen them already. And then we have some cool opportunities. Would you like to talk about these, Heini?
Yes, definitely. So of course, as we're in this series where you prep for the exam, there's a little bit of an offer here that you can leverage to schedule your exam and take your exam. So this was already announced at FabCon, but there seems to be still some 50% discounts available for the certifications. And for those of you who are joining live and watching live this session, take a look in the chat. It seems that there might be something a little special there for you. So keep your eye out, check it out and see what you can find there. And then, of course, in addition to the certification itself, there are some really cool fabric themed events and kind of what would one say, promotions and things happening both virtually as well as in person. So the Fabric Data Days are coming really soon, and it starts from November 4th onwards. You can find more information there at the link. And then in March next year, there will be the FabCon Atlanta. And here you also have the code FabLive for you to use to save $200 on the ticket price. So very nice to leverage and get it a little easier for yourself.
Yeah, pretty cool. I have been attending the last 2 FabCons and both have been amazing. So this spring in Vegas and now this autumn in Vienna, and both were amazing. So I highly recommend you to go to FabCon if you're thinking about it.
Yes,
then
totally agreed.
Let's go forward. So Heini, would you like to continue?
Yeah, so of course, we want to keep this session interactive. We've actually decided with Alexi, we'll go through the really important stuff very fast and leave some space also for live questions. So of course, there will be some that will be answered on the go by our moderators, but we will also highlight some here live at the end of the session. So say hi, ask questions, interact in the chat, and we'll pick some questions for later.
Yeah.
All right, with this, we are kind of coming to the last section of this series. And well, the last bit is really about how do you prepare for exam day and answering any questions that you might still have. Taking an exam successfully isn't just about knowing the content. Of course, you need to know the content, otherwise it will be really difficult. But there's also a lot of useful strategies and things you should know to make it easier for you. And that is what today is actually about. So what we'll go through is first, why to get certified, how do you prepare? Then as you are taking the exam, you will of course have this passing score, etc. in different formats. So it's useful to know those beforehand as well. We'll look at some practice questions and case studies, kind of a little demo, and then some tips and tricks for exam day to help you navigate the exam format efficiently and use your time wisely. And then we will finish with some Q&A, as already mentioned.
Yeah, so let's first talk about why to get certified. What is the reason why you should get certified? Okay, so here we have some statistics. Maybe everybody can read them from this screen. I'm not going to read them here. I don't want to read them here. Maybe I want to ask a question from you, Heini. Have you had ever this problem that you just had too much money that you didn't know what to do with that money? Have you ever had that problem?
No, not yet. Hopefully someday.
Me neither. And what is the point here? Basically, certifications allow you to earn more. That is very cool in my opinion, since I have I think around 6 or 7 Microsoft certificate badges, and basically what those badges have allowed me to do, they have allowed me to get some salary increases, because then I have been able to prove that I have expertise in some area. And also I have been working for Microsoft partner companies my whole career basically, and those certifications are a really important part of getting those partnership tiers with Microsoft for those partner companies. So people working in partner companies, they are really typically encouraged to get those certifications, and in many cases the employer sponsors those certifications, and also maybe you can get some time from your work to read through the materials and prepare for those certifications. But basically, in my opinion, that's one of the main reasons to get certified. Also, one cool thing about certifications is that when you are studying the certifications, you have this clear path you follow to get that badge, and then you learn a lot of skills during that path. So you have this goal to study for. So basically, those are some of my best reasons why to get certified. What about you, Heini? Do you have something to add there?
Yeah, those were really good highlights. And then, of course, I work as a consultant. So sometimes the certifications are a requirement from a customer side. So depending on what kind of position in your company you might be working in, it might be something that is required for a specific thing that you are doing. And then for me personally, I think the biggest benefit is kind of that last bit that you were pointing to as well. But from the perspective of I work with these technologies daily. So it's not like I'm studying something completely new, but a lot of times the exam covers such a broad set of topics that it's not actually possible in your work to work hands-on with all of that. So with the exams, it's kind of a way for me to iterate and check, do I have some gaps in my knowledge? Is there some areas that I would like to, for example, focus on in the future more? Are there some areas that I have no idea about and I just need to kind of upgrade my knowledge about that? So it's also a lot for me, kind of a way to check my own skills and knowledge and figure out where do I maybe need to develop or where I want to head in the future as well.
Yes, very, very cool reasons. I totally agree with those. And I'm also a team leader at work, so I time to time do recruiting, and always when I see a new candidate CV, I check that does she or he have any certifications, and then if so, then I know that at least the candidate should have the basic knowledge about those areas that he or she is certified in. But yeah,
Definitely.
Let's move forward. So next, let's talk about exam format and scoring. Would you like to take over here, Heini?
Yeah, this is maybe not something that is kind of, all of the parts aren't so evident when you are doing the exams itself. The exam will look a little different for each person that is doing it. So it is approximately 60 questions that you get in the exam. And not each question is actually 1 point. So you cannot kind of track in your mind that, well, I know this is right, I know this is right, this is how many points I'm going to get. And maybe that's also not a wise use of your energy while doing the exam anyways. But just know, of course, right answers get you points. And it is good that you answer to all of the questions, because there is no penalty for guessing wrong or getting the question wrong in some cases. In certain cases, you can skip a question, but it's always better to guess if you don't know the answer, because there's always the possibility that you actually get them right. And one of the things that I use every time when I do an exam is I mark items for review. I kind of go through all the questions and I mark the ones that I'm not 100% sure on. I mark them for review so I can look back on them. We'll see that in the demo, like what does that look like in the exam format itself. But that is a really good way to be able to use your time efficiently when you are doing the exam because you have limited time. And for the specialty and role-based exams, as is the DP-700 as well, you have 100 minutes to answer questions. You have a little bit of time in the beginning to kind of get through the, I could say, preliminary parts of the exam. Then the actual exam time starts, which is the 100 minutes. And then in the end, because you can also mark questions, for example, to leave feedback, that then, of course, does not eat away your exam time. It would kind of be a pity if it did. So there's some time in the end that is separate from the exam time to do those things in the end. There's a lot of different kinds of exam question types. So the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, multiple choice. You have question and then multiple choices that you choose from. But there's also other types of questions. So these are some of the name: build list, hot area, active screen, drag and drop, etc. If you have not done an exam before, there's kind of a demo exam that you can take. It doesn't have questions related to this topic specifically, but it's good to just get familiar with the navigation and things like that. So for example, you have a question where you have to drag and drop kind of different steps in the right order. So there are all these different types. And you kind of then also need to answer accordingly. And especially if you're not like an English first language speaker, it's always good to read the questions carefully because there might be like choose 3 of the 5 options there or something like that. So make sure to read the questions correctly. Then there are the case studies. So those try to mimic real world scenarios. They give you a little bit more context to the scenario. You get a few different kind of these sub-pages of information related to it about the business, for example, about technical details, about things that are related to the questions and things that are not. And part of the trick there is also to be then, when you have these questions related to the case study, you need to figure out what information is actually relevant to those questions. So there's sometimes even quite a bit of information in the case studies that is not actually used to answer the questions. So it's good to kind of read the information, check the questions, then go back to double check, what is the relevant things. Then you are able to answer the questions much more efficiently. Yeah, anything you want to add here, Aleksi?
No, I want to add only that we are really going to come back to these time management strategies and these different types of questions a little bit later on. So don't worry, we will be discussing them in more detail quite shortly when we go through a few more slides. Then we are going to come back to those.
Exactly.
Then there's this like how the exam is scored. You already touched upon this a bit. Do you want to add something more?
Yeah, so as said, not each question is a single point, and it's kind of this scale score that you get. The score will always range from 0 to 1,000, and the passing line is 700. But it's good to know that it's not necessarily 70%. How the cut score actually gets determined is it gets determined during the exam development phase, and it will get based on the skills of who this exam is for and kind of how difficult are actually the items in the pool of questions. So if in the exam development phase they realize, oh, these are really hard questions, then, relatively the cutoff score will be a little bit lower. But it's always ranged so that the cutoff is at 700 points. And this can actually get updated as the exam gets updated as well, since the pool of questions might change and things like that. For the tips and tricks, again, there's some points here that have been already highlighted. Remember, no points deducted from wrong answers, so always answer something. A lot of times I've noticed this with myself, is it's good to go with your gut and kind of your first instinct that this is right. Then once you start to think of it again and again, then you just confuse yourself. So I found this to work for myself quite well. Note that some of the questions in the exam are ones that you cannot go back to, but that is always stated in the question or kind of when you start that section. So again, read questions carefully, check if you can go back or not. And then, these points are different depending on the question. So make sure to answer every question, then you give the best chance for yourself to succeed. Anything else you want to add?
No, not really. Not really. I think you said it all here. So let's move forward. Next, let's talk a little bit how to prepare for the exam, and if you're starting out, what to do first. So basically, typically, first thing you want to do is to check the exam study guide. And now when we are talking about the DP-700 exam, you are going to check the DP-700 exam study guide. It is basically this one pager that has everything you need to know about the exam and what kind of skills are needed. It takes like 5 minutes to read that through, so I would highly recommend to do that first so you get an idea what this exam is all about and what are the skills that are needed in order to pass. Then there is, of course, some Microsoft Learn modules that can be used for the preparation, and there are like a lot of like these pre-made learning paths there that are made for you to prepare for the exam. And personally, I always go them through after I have checked the study guide. So I then go to the Microsoft Learn those study modules, and I study them and do the questions there are and practice with those. And after that, there are a ton of good community-made resources. For example, I had that 11-hour course for DP-700, but there are also other great creators in the community space that have made their own study materials for people to use. And there is that link underneath aka.ms/dp700/prepare where you can find some of those community resources. And I would highly recommend to check those out because some of them are really good and really expand the things that are covered in the official study like Learn modules and expand on those topics, because I think in some cases the Learn modules do not go that deep into the subject, and you would need to have more deeper knowledge in the exam than covered in those Learn modules. Anything else you want to add here, Heini?
No, I have exactly the same strategy as you. I always go to the study guide and then I go through the Learn modules. It's kind of a great way to ensure I've got all my bases covered.
Yes. Then let's move forward. Do you want to go through this slide?
Yes, so there's also like multiple ways you can practice. So there is the DP-700 practice assessment that you can also find on the exam page on Microsoft Learn. So it's a good way to, also get familiar with the process of kind of taking an exam and ensuring that you can find the answers that you oftentimes already know the answers to, but also always like taking an exam is a different kind of scenario than just figuring out an answer in real life. So it's good to get familiar with that. One thing to note is that the pool of questions in the practice assessment is a little more limited. So if you keep taking it over and over again, eventually you'll just start remembering some of the answers. So it is not kind of an unlimited pool of things that you can rely on, but it's a good way to kind of check your knowledge on the way as you're studying for the exam. One important thing is that you can use the Microsoft Learn while you are taking the exam. So it's good to know where to find, the specifics related to the topics in this particular exam that you're preparing for. So if you're taking the DP-700, which is very much related to fabric, then it's good to know where do you find all that fabric-related information in Microsoft Learn. So if you need to check some answer during the exam, you can do it fast. And then, of course, whenever you use something in practice, then the information is much easier for you to kind of recall in your mind. So practice in Fabric itself, practice the different things that are listed in the exam requirements. That way it will be much easier to remember those during the exam itself. So we'll come back to kind of using Microsoft Learn a little more on the next slide as well.
Yeah, here's more about that, but I think we can cover many of the tips during the demo section, but maybe you want to say something here already.
Yeah, maybe the main thing is to know that, yes, you have Learn available, know where to find things. Remember that you cannot check every single answer from Learn, because otherwise you will be out of time in a flash and you won't get through the entire exam. So be strategic. If you know something, just know it. Don't go to double check it in Microsoft Learn. Use it really kind of strategically for the points where you do need the verification for yourself. That would be my tip.
Yeah, let's move forward, and we will come back to using the Learn shortly, since we can discuss it during this demo section that is next. So next, let's do a demo a bit about those practice questions that can be found on the Learn website. I need to change the view now. So can you now see the Microsoft Learn there?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Great.
You're in the right place.
So basically, here is the page for the Microsoft Fabric Data Engineer Associate exam. This is the page where you can find those like study modules, for example. Here is the prepare for the exam section, and here are the study modules that help you to prepare for the exam. And underneath here, we have this practice assessment. And this is basically the practice exam for this exam. So if we open up this, I can maybe open up it to another window, we start to get these like practice questions that basically prepare you for the exam. So here we have a question related to the exam, and then we have the options. And then if you choose one option and click next, actually I need to click one option, and then I can check my answer and see is it correct or not. And then you also get this explanation for the correct answer, and also links to the documentation about this specific topic, so that you can check why you maybe answered incorrectly, or what was the reason that this answer is correct and not some other topic. So you can really dive deeper with these links here. But this is a great resource to use. But like Heini already mentioned, the question pool here is not like endless. So I wouldn't do this over and over again, because you start to remember these questions, and then you remember, oh, this was correct and this was not. So it doesn't really then benchmark your actual knowledge anymore. You're just remembering things, and that's not probably the right way to go. So I would prefer to use these resources when I think that I'm quite ready to take the exam. So I would do this check, do I really know this stuff, and then use this resource to benchmark my knowledge. But this is how I would go about with this one. Do you have something you want to talk about this practice assessment?
Yeah, the second part to note is it doesn't have the same structure and navigation of an actual exam. So this is more like the multiple choice questions you get in the Learn modules as well, that you might walk through to prepare. So it's not the same navigation as in an exam. Yes, you get some different types of questions. Here we have multiple choice and things like that. But it's not the same navigation as in the exam. For that, you have the demo exam available, where you can kind of get familiar with the navigation of the exam itself, and how do you check mark those review boxes, for example.
Yes. And then we would like to demo the exam sandbox. And what is this exam sandbox? Basically, here you can get idea about how does that exam look like in the real exam scenario, and how does the UI look, and what kind of options you have there. So basically, if you haven't ever taken Microsoft certification exam, I would highly recommend to check out this exam sandbox, and let's check it out together here. So let's launch the exam sandbox to see what this is like. So this really looks like you would be in the actual exam. So basically the UI looks the same, and you have these things you have to go through before you can get started with the exam, and then you get this basic information about the exam. And before we get started, I would like to mention that in the DP-700 exam, we don't have any labs. In some Microsoft certification exams, we do have labs, but in the DP-700, we don't have those. But in the DP-700, we do have case studies, and we can soon check out using this sandbox how does those case studies look. But if we move forward here we get more information, and I would recommend always to read this through so that you know what you are agreeing when you go forward, etc. Because there is this kind of a NDA related to the exam that you cannot really discuss the details you had in the exam and so on. So I wouldn't break that NDA, and I would like to know what I'm signing when I'm doing this stuff. So, but yeah, here we can start this exam sandbox and get familiar with the UI. So this is how basically it will look like in the real exam. Only difference that I want to highlight in this UI now is that there is no Microsoft Learn button here that is in the actual exam. So if you want to access that Microsoft Learn documentation, there will be one button extra in the exam. And this is only in Microsoft like a role-based exam, so meaning 2-star, and then in the expert exam, meaning those 3-star exam. But in the fundamental exams, you don't have that Learn button. So basically, I would think that this is the layout you would see in the fundamental exam. And then in those higher level exam, like DP-700, you have the button that will take you to the Learn documentation. But here, basically, you can see how does this UI look and what you can do here. And like we already discussed, one very important part here is this review later button. And this is good to utilize in the exam. So if you are unsure about some answer, you can mark that question as review for later. But there are actually some questions and sections you cannot come back to later on. So we will discuss those as well shortly. But now we would be able to answer one of these, and maybe we can review this later, and then we can move forward, and we can see that we have different types of questions in the exam. So basically now we have this where we have to select multiple answers. Always read these instructions, what the question is looking for, so that you know that are you should you pick multiple choices or what you should do there. But there are like different types of questions, as we can see when we move forward, and some questions require you to drag and drop these things as well. So different types of questions. Is there anything, Heidi, you would like to add at this stage?
Yeah, as you could probably see, these questions in the demo sandbox, they don't make a lot of sense. So they're just, to get you familiar with how do you work with the exam navigation and the different types of questions. So the questions themselves are not related to DP-700 in any way, for example.
Yeah. And now I will try to click this through so that we can get to that case study quickly. Some of these questions are, I think, DP-700 doesn't have these type of questions that much, if I'm not mistaken. But this is like just the overall illustration. What does this UI? Sometimes you can have also these like screenshots that you have to check that what's happening there and then answer based on those. So you have to know the Fabric UI. And also I want to highlight here that when you're preparing for these Microsoft certification exams, it is always great to have hands-on experience. So if you have the possibility to get hands-on experience with Fabric, please do so, because that helps so much in the exam. Because if you're just reading through the documentation, I think you don't learn that much. I mainly learned by doing so. That's probably the preferred way of learning for many people. But yeah, here are many different types of questions. Some of these are like these kind of a yes/no type of questions, and now let's move forward. And then
here, if you noted in the previous screen that we cannot go back to it said that in this section you will not be able to return back. In the very first exam I took, I did not read that carefully, and I actually went through the questions, and then I realized, I'm not able to go back. So always pay attention. Here it's again stated. So as long as you read the question through properly, you are fine and will be able to catch that.
Yeah, and of course you can see that there is no review later button here. So this is a section you cannot review later. Then let's move forward. And again, we have to pick a choice, and those questions we cannot review. But then we have this review screen. And here we can see the questions we would like to review, and basically by using these links here, we would be able to go back to those questions and change the answers. And maybe this is a good time to talk about a little bit more about the time management aspect. So my recommendation for using the Learn documentation, basically you're able to go to this Learn here during the exam and search for topics here. My recommended way of using that would be that you wouldn't stop in any questions before the review section and use the Learn documentation. So that you don't run out of time, because going through the Learn documentation can take actually a ton of time. So I would answer to all of these questions before the review section, and then I would just flag these questions for review that I'm a bit unsure of, and then check the Learn documentation. Does it have answers for those? And again, I wouldn't spend a ton of time per question finding those answers, because maybe your initial guess or initial thought could be correct, and then you're just wasting your time going through the documentation. But it is critical that you answer to all the questions in the exam, because you don't get any point reductions or minus points if you answer incorrectly. So there could be some easy questions later on the exam that you could be getting correctly without the Learn documentation. And if you don't have time to answer to those, you don't get those points. And one more thing that I wanted to also say about the Learn documentation, that one of my hot tips for the exam is that there is this filter button. This is really convenient, because you can search for Fabric here and filter these results by Microsoft Fabric. So if you're taking the DP-700 exam, filter these results by Fabric, so that when you're searching topics here, you don't get like documentation pages about some other Microsoft products. You only get results that are related to Microsoft Fabric. So this is a really hot tip. So please use this filter in the exam to get these queries more correctly here and point them to the right documentation pages. But yeah, do you have something you want to add about this kind of time management strategy overall in the exam?
Yeah, I have a very similar approach myself when I take the exams. So just go through all the questions the first round. Don't stop to think about it too much. Just get the first answer in, and then review all the ones that I'm not 100% sure about, or I need the Microsoft Learn for. And I think it's a great strategy not to open the Learn kind of on the first pass. And sometimes what you have happen also is that once you go on through the questions, there's something in a following question that reminds you of something that helps you remember an earlier answer, or it even maybe gives the answer you in some way. So it's always good to kind of go through everything before you settle anything down. And then the other part to note is that the order can change between the sections for each person that takes the exam. So it might be similar to what is here in the demo sandbox, or it might be something different entirely. So that's really good to note and kind of keep in mind that don't get too stuck in your mind about what the order might be. Always check what is this kind of set of questions that I'm starting. And you have this where you see how many questions there are, how many case studies there are in the beginning of the exam. So you'll be able to kind of have that big picture before you start.
Yeah, totally agree. But it's always helpful to read the instructions that the exam gives you. So if it says that you cannot come back to this section, you really cannot come back to this section. And if it says that you have to review these questions now and then you cannot review them later, you cannot do that. So please read the instructions. I know that I am not probably always the best reading the instructions. I just I know this stuff, and then I go through and then I realize that I didn't read the instructions carefully, and then it can hurt me. But yeah,
I think we all do it sometime, and then once we do it once, we kind of remember it better the next time. And especially when you see the finish section button, that is kind of like, okay, I am kind of closing something for good and I cannot go back anymore.
Yes. And now if we click this button, we wouldn't be able to come back to these questions and we would have to review them. But yeah, in the exam, you have some type of progress bar, so you know how many questions you have still ahead of you. And I think in DP-700, you are eventually going to have a case study. So keep that in mind. I think the case study can be either at the beginning or at the end. So there are at least 2 variations of the exam, but keep in mind that most likely there is going to be case study somewhere in the exam. So if you don't have it in the beginning, then you know that you are going to have those standard questions first, and then you need to probably review them before doing this case study. So think about your time management strategy from that perspective and reserve enough time for that case study, because the case study can be quite lengthy. If we finish this section and then we always sometimes get these prompts that are you sure that you want to move forward, then you should really read these, that what happens next when you click yes, so that you know what you are doing. So let's click yes. And now here we have the case study. Would you like to, Heini, talk a bit more about this case study and what is the thing here?
Yes. So the case study always presents some kind of scenario. So you have most of the time the overview where it's kind of described what is the company that these questions will relate to. And then they have some different information regarding the existing environment from the technical perspective. And then there is this section about the requirements, kind of what are they aiming for, what are they trying to do. And this also can have multiple of these sections. So it might not be just technical requirements, but some business goals and things like that you can see here as well. I think this is actually quite a good example that shows the complexity. So actually what my personal strategy is that I kind of skim over everything that is here, but if there's some really lengthy pages, I don't actually go in and read them at this point, because I might be reading something that I don't need for the question specifically. So I can always return to these specifications of the, like what information do I have for the case study. So then I can go to the question, I can read through the question, and if I need to check any further information, I can always go back to those sections, as Alexi is showing here. So that is kind of my strategy to ensure I'm not wasting my time reading something I don't actually need to read, because oftentimes these case studies do have some irrelevant information as well. So, but the questions are very similar to the regular questions. They just relate to the information we have been given specifically here. And a lot of times it does require you to check something in the information, kind of in the case study itself, like what information was given to you. But once in a while, you might have a question that is more general, and it does not actually like require you to understand a requirement or anything like that. So that's why I have this strategy. I kind of skim what information do I have, I go to the questions, and I go back to fetch the kind of the nitty-gritty details I need to answer the questions.
Yeah, my strategy is a bit different, since I tend to read through the whole case study once before checking the questions, but I read it through very quickly so that I know basically where I can find the specific section that is being discussed in the question. Because like you said, the majority of the questions are not like self-contained, if that's the right word. So you need to go back and check the case study, and you cannot just answer based on the information that is being given at the
Very
question.
true.
So it's referring back to the case study, and you need to find the section or sections that are necessary
Yes.
for answering to that specific question. But yeah, then we can put in our answers, and then we are going to have this separate review section for the case study, and we have like a mini review section for it, and we can check those answers that we have put there. So, and here I can see that I have now flagged 2 questions for review, and I can demonstrate that this we can go back to the question and check that, and then I think some button should take us back to the review section. I don't know if it's missing here, but I remember that in the actual exam you don't have to click this through. So so I think this is a bit different than in the actual exam, because I think if I click some here, I would be able to go back to the review section without clicking this through. But just
even
good to know that.
even this screen says that there should be exit review mode button somewhere, but I couldn't see it there. Could be wrong.
Yeah, but this is like this UI here is like 90% representative of the actual exam UI. So if you haven't done any Microsoft certification exams previously, I highly recommend to check this out, and so that you can get comfortable with the UI, because sometimes the exam situation can be quite like you could get some anxiety about the exam and about passing. So it helps if you are like comfortable with the UI and you know where to click, etc. So it feels familiar then. Okay, then we can finish this section, and after this we would have a lab section here. But like I said, DP-700 doesn't, at least at this stage, have any labs there, so you don't need to go to the like fabric and do stuff. In my opinion, that would be a cool thing to have. I don't know if they will have it in the future. I think people wouldn't like to have a lab, but personally I would like to have a lab, because when I can go to fabric and they give me instructions, I'm very confident that I know my stuff there, or at least I should know my stuff there. So that would be a bit embarrassing if I wouldn't know. But yeah, maybe we're all just faking it and nobody knows what they are doing. But yeah,
could be.
Also, one thing that came to my mind is I really want to highlight that if you are now thinking about taking the DP-700 exam or any other Microsoft certification exam, good thing is to book the exam immediately, so that you have it somewhere and you have the deadline that you are aiming for. But always you can reschedule the exam, so you can always move your deadline. But it would be helpful to have that deadline and that exam in the calendar already, so that you know that at this day you are probably going to take it. And when you already book it, it means that eventually you are gonna take it, even though you would postpone it. But at some day you are just going to take it, and then hopefully you are going to pass it as well. And that takes me to another point, that failing the exam, it's not the end of the world, and I wouldn't study forever to the exam, so that, because I think nobody gets the perfect score from the exam. I have never seen anybody with perfect score. I have seen many people to get over 900. I think I have gotten from some fundamental exam over 900. But for example, when I did DP-700, like in January, I think I got like 800 something. So that was far from perfect, but still nobody is perfect, and it's not the end of the world if you fail. You can just try again at some point, and that would be my best tips for that. Do you have something you want to add about that?
Yeah, nothing to add. I think that was a really good tip. It's good to have some pressure for yourself, like positive pressure.
Yeah, it is always good. Then I just quickly show you the study guide. If you're wondering what that is, we already talked about this. So this is this one pager that has all the informational skills that are needed for the exam. And also here we can see when the exam was updated, and underneath we can also see, I think, this kind of a minor change log here that shows which section was changed and when, because especially Microsoft Fabric, it's a very new product and things keep changing, and Microsoft is adding a lot of cool new stuff there. So they need to keep updating these exams so that the scope can't stay static over time. So also from this study guide, you are able to see at least the latest changes that were made to the scope of the exam. Here we can see that in April we had some minor changes, and these two sections didn't actually change at all. But here, if you see that there have been a major change to some section and you're studying to the exam, then you probably know that you would need to recheck and restudy some things, because there have been some major changes to the exam. Anything you want to add about the study guide?
Yeah, I kind of go through it point by point and make a note for myself if I'm like, I have no idea what this thing is about. And then I will kind of focus on those areas a little more to ensure that I don't have like a huge gap on something.
And when we're here, I want to talk about DP-900, that is this Microsoft Azure Data Fundamental exams, because I think many people do not know that this exam actually includes Microsoft Fabric stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you're new to Microsoft Fabric, then I would highly recommend you to do DP-900 first, because this is a fundamental exam. It's way easier, and you get to practice things with this exam. Also remember that with this exam you cannot use the Learn documentation. But just a little side note here, that this exam also includes Microsoft Fabric stuff, and this is more like a tailored more towards beginners, because the DP-700 is already a role-based and associate level exam, so it's not super easy. So this is a easier version. But yeah, this was like a little sidetrack here.
Yeah, and a nice way to get used to the exam, kind of
Yes.
taking the exam itself.
Yes. And also, if people have just joined, I want to advertise that I have this like 11 hours of content on my YouTube channel related to DP-700 exam. So I have a ton of videos here that will help you to prepare, but little advertisement break here. So go check out my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you need some more materials for exam prep. Like this playlist has almost 100,000 views. So many people have been using this, have gotten like their badges by using these videos here. But yeah, next let's go back to the presentation, and soon we are going to actually have some questions from the chat.
Yeah.
So let's go through these very quickly here. So we had tips and tricks. We are already this, if you go very quickly this through, so we have time to answer.
It's just good to know that kind of on the exam day, since nowadays I believe almost everybody is taking the exams as online proctored exams. So you have this process of checking in. Make sure you start it ahead of time. There's sometimes technical difficulties that arise, so that you have time to actually sort them out. So for example, you have to verify your identity and actually take pictures of the room that you're taking the exam in, and then the proctor will let you into your exam itself. Then before the exam time itself starts, you will have the title screen. Then there will be the NDA. There will be kind of all that pre-information about the exam, so the instructions and things like these. And then there's also this skills survey before the exam starts that asks about your expertise about the areas. I think that has to do with kind of developing the exam onwards. After that, that's when the exam time starts. You start to take the exam. As Alexi was showing the demo, you see that there's a clock at the top right corner of your screen while you're taking the exam, so you can kind of keep an eye on the time. And then in the sections where you can review your questions, review those questions, you have to do that within the exam time itself. Then once you're finished, you get the submit the exam, and then you get the scoring. Most of the time you get the score right away when you finish, and you are able to see the results right away. If you do want to, you can leave some comments about the questions. So for example, if you think the wording is like misleading, or it could be interpreted in multiple ways or something like that, it's valuable for the exam development process that feedback is given. So you can also, there was a check mark to leave feedback after the exam. That does not count toward the exam time. Again, it is outside of that time. And then hopefully you pass and you get to celebrate. And if not, you know what to focus on for the next round of taking the exam as well.
Yeah, and one side point that is my opinion, I would highly recommend taking the exam at the test center and not at home, because
it's easier.
It's easier. It's way less hassle if you just take it at the test center, because at home you need to prepare, like there are strict criteria what kind of space you need for taking the exam, etc. But let's not dive too deep into that. But I would highly recommend taking it at the test center if you have the possibility to do so. And then here are some tips and tricks that we kind of already covered, so maybe we don't need to go through this. So, or yes. Is there something you want to recap here?
Yeah, I think this nicely recaps all the points that we've covered during this session as well.
Yeah, one of the most important parts: schedule your exam now if you haven't already, so you have that deadline there. And then let's move forward. Soon we're going to take some questions from the chat, but quickly let's recap these. We have this amazing amazing offer there, 50% off from these 3 exams. It expires in November and supplies are limited, so take advantage of that. And remember to check the YouTube chat if you're watching this live. There could be some surprises there, so remember to check that out. And then there is Fabric Data Days coming, so more of these live sessions are coming, ton of these actually very soon. There you can find the link for those. And then FabCon Atlanta is coming in March. I hopefully will be there. I really want to be there. And it's a cool event, and I would highly recommend you to attend if you are thinking. It's one of the coolest events I have participated so far. Both Vegas and Vienna were super amazing. And here is a code that allows you to save $200 from the ticket price. And next, let's have those questions. Do we have any questions there, Heini, we would like to go through?
So I am just checking here. So there was a question that how likely are legacy-focused questions? For example, could we get questions about Power BI streaming, or would the questions more likely focus on real-time Power BI reporting through KQL?
Yeah, I think the
specific
Power BI stuff is basically out of scope for DP-700. So that's already that you don't really have any Power BI related questions in the DP-700. That's more DP-600 and PL-300 stuff if we are talking about Power BI reporting. I think some real-time dashboard things are in the scope of DP-700, if I remember correctly. Or do you know how to better answer to that question?
I totally agree. I think that was very accurate. And I would just always kind of, if you have these questions about is this included, go back to the exam requirements page. That is where everything is listed. This is what the questions will touch on. There was a very similar question about, could it be that there are some questions about Azure Data Factory? For example, there were some in the practice exam. I do think the focus in this particular one is more on the Fabric Data Factory pipeline section, but as it's data engineering, there could be some reference to Azure Data Factory, but that definitely shouldn't be in the main focus in this particular exam.
Yeah, maybe a question about running Azure Data Factory pipelines via Fabric, or that could happen there, but I don't see any. And basically, the data pipeline tool in Microsoft Fabric is like a clone of Azure Data Factory. So if you're highly skilled in Azure data platform stack, I would assume that like passing the DP-700 shouldn't be that difficult to you, because the skills transfer very, very well to Fabric. So I wouldn't be too afraid of this exam in that case. Do we have any other questions there?
Yes, there was a question that should we still expect coding skills like PySpark, because now everyone uses Copilot or similar?
Yes, you really need to know at least syntax of 3 programming languages in DP-700: SQL, PySpark, and then KQL. I think you don't need to write code in the exam, so to say, but you need to maybe feel a missing part of the code or know what some code does, or those kind of questions can appear. Or what do you think, Heini?
Yeah, that would be my guidance as well. It's good to be familiar with the syntax, and then most likely you will be able to answer those questions and know like the basic things, how to filter, how to look at your data set and things like that.
Yeah.
I think we have a little time for one more question, which I saw kind of coming up in the comments a few times on the way. So it looks like the DP-700 will be updated on October 31, and there are people who have been studying for the DP-700, and now like what to do now if the exam is updating.
Yeah, we have to see how major are those updates. I would assume that it's not going to be like a huge update like they had with DP-600 when DP-700 came out, because they were covering so many same things. But I think at least some things could be, I think maybe they could include copy job as part of the exam or those kind of things. And by the way, also again, little advertisement of my YouTube channel, I will be eventually covering those topics that will be added to the DP-700. So I will be updating my playlist with new videos that cover those topics that are currently not covered. But we just have to see if the information is not yet available, how the exam will update. But probably the things that you have been studying now don't go to waste. Or what do you think?
Yes, that's what I would say as well. The bulk of the exam will stay the same. There will be some areas that are updated, but everything you've been studying for will be still very much relevant. And then you can just kind of upgrade in the little areas that get refined as we go on.
Yeah, maybe they will add one leg security there at some point, I would imagine. I don't know if it's already part of these updates. It's a preview feature, but we have to see. But yeah, basically, now I think we are at the 1 hour mark, so I think we have to end
we have to
here.
start wrapping up.
Yeah, yes. So thanks for everybody to participating to this live learning session with me and Heini. It was a lot of fun again.
It was.
These kind of sessions will be many sessions in the Fabric data days that are similar to these, so please tune into those. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining, and good luck on the exam.
Yes.
Thank you all, and have a nice end of the week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.